Here we are, starting to work our way into this new normal.
Oh, what fresh hell is this?
Actually, it's not so bad. Coming out of our houses, social distancing, wearing masks. Actually, I kind of like that part. I feel like a sexy bandit. Except, sometimes I forget my pants.
What the hell?
The point is, we're all gonna get through this. Take care of each other. Be considerate. Wash your hands. And remember, Toxic Radio is here for you. We'll rock you with the music and entertain you with the shows. We'll make it just a little easier to adjust to this weird new world.
I love you guys.
We're not going anywhere, and we appreciate you being along for the ride.
Enjoy your pants.
Oh yeah, you betcha. Remember, play life safe. Play your radio toxic. Hey, buddy. Rah. Hey, man, that's a sweet heavy metal happy hour t-shirt. Where'd you pick that up?
Thanks, dude. I got it at the Toxic Radio shop.
Toxic Radio has a shop?
Yeah, dude. It's in the app or online at toxicradio.net.
That is sweet.
Yeah, and I also got a rockin' Toxic Radio hoodie and a Red Band Underground shirt. Dude, I'm gonna look so rockin' at the party tomorrow.
Well, I think you look pretty now.
Oh, wait, what?
The Toxic Radio shop is a place to get all your Toxic Radio gear. Shirts, hoodies, stickers. Find it at toxicradio.net or on the app. Don't buy it safe. Buy it toxic. Hey, where you going, man?
Welcome to Paradelphia Radio. This is Rick Pruitt once again here with the Toxic Network, Toxic Radio Network. And I have my trusty, I call him a co-host because he's been on like 400 of these shows, Mr. Toxic Mike.
I've earned that title now. I've moved up. Do I get like a plaque or anything?
I'm feeling generous tonight. I just promoted you.
Oh my God. I feel like I want to hang something on my wall now and put like a little mention on the fridge to show that I'm there.
I mean, it's not like not like it's your station or anything, you know.
I mean, kind of. I'm happy to sit in with you week in and week out, and because I'll tell you what, out of all the shows, your show definitely teaches me the most. Stuff that I would have never thought about in a million friggin' years. So
my wife says the same thing on a daily basis. So
it's stuff that I either never knew, never thought I wanted to know, or really never even wanted to know. Just craziness of like families in caves and weirdness, just all over the place.
Families in caves.
Families in caves.
Well, we're going to get to some weirdness here tonight too, because we have a show tonight it's something we have not yet. In all the shows we've done, we've never talked about this topic, but we do have a guest waiting in the wings here. He is an author. He is a software architect. He is the founder of several businesses and tech ventures who studied literature and writing at San Francisco University. He has looked into and studied world mythology, religions, philosophy, science, cooking, martial arts, you name it. Christopher Laine, welcome to Paradelphia.
Hey guys. How you guys doing?
Hey.
What's going
on?
Very
good. And Christopher is here tonight to talk about his latest novel called Screens.
Yeah, how you guys doing?
Doing all right. Where
are you guys located?
We are in just outside of Philadelphia, New Jersey.
Okay, cool. Nice. So I am in Wellington, New Zealand.
Yes, I saw that in your profile. Yes.
Yeah. I obviously am. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying Mike and I had a little bet going on earlier. What time is it there?
It is, I always forget myself. It's 2:04 p.m. on Friday.
On Friday, right? I thought that's the way it went. Yeah, you guys are always ahead of us.
Yeah, that's right. So if you
on like New Year's
want
Eve,
lottery
you guys are
numbers,
the first New Year. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want lottery numbers or the future, you want to know the future, I've got it in my head.
That's not a bad idea.
I make some money. I could scam somebody, right? Somebody.
Why has nobody thought of this before? Yeah,
exactly. I'm sure someone has. Yeah. So we're talking about my novel Screens. So yeah, Screens is a 5-year project of mine, which started out as a novella that just grew and grew and grew. Mm-hmm. And it all kind of kicked off back in 2015. I happened to be in the Bay Area. There's the cover. I was back in the Bay Area because that's where I grew up. I grew up in San Francisco. And I was back there, and I hadn't been back in quite a while. I was back on a business trip and was on one of the trains. I was on the Muni train. I don't know, I was going someplace. And it was the first time I really had seen this because in Wellington, New Zealand, I walk most places, and the buses are usually not very crowded. But I was on this train and I look around and I realized that everyone, except for me and this one old lady, are on a screen. Everybody is looking at their mobile phones. Everybody's got that blank expression,
right.
And I had this sort of epiphany of like, wow, that's really kind of creepy, actually. That's kind of when you're doing it, you don't know that's what you look like, right? But It is when you see a whole bus or a whole thing of people just lost in this thing. And I equated it to addiction. I was like, yeah, that's what addicts look like, right? Like having come from a rather, shall we say, colorful background, I'm well familiar with addiction and its insidious nature on a human life. And it very much struck me. It's like an addiction, like people staring at these phones. And so I had a second notion, I couldn't leave it there and be like compassionate, be like, oh, that's sad. I was like, oh no, how weird can I make this? So the next phase was, well, what is it you're seeing in this? And I had the idea that what if there were horrific things, like extra-dimensional things that could feed off of us through our screens, through our phones and our PCs and our TVs, these things which we couldn't see, sort of like that movie, They Live. Is it They Live? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Roddy Piper.
With the glasses. Yeah.
The
Right.
glasses. Yeah. So sort of a similar theme to that, but these extra-dimensional things are somehow feeding off of us through our screens, and at the same time injecting into us all the worst emotions, paranoia and hatred and anxiety. And that's where it all came from. It all just took off from there. And once I had this little epiphany on this Muni train, I decided I was going to go back and do a lot of research on addiction and on screen usage and its effects on the human brain. And then I sort of kept going and formed it into this idea that this manuscript was written by this one doomed character, the narrator of the book. This manuscript that he hand typed on like an old, IBM Selectric typewriter,
right?
And then distributed out into the world. And copies of this manuscript are making their way around the world. But it's all done by these people who have read this manuscript and they become terrified of everything to do with screens, right? They've gotten rid of their mobile phones, they've gotten rid of their PCs, they've disconnected completely, and now they're trying to share these paper manuscripts with other people before they are discovered by these extra-dimensional creatures that then can send their hideous minions to tear them apart. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of the book.
Yeah, I mean, the book was really in and of itself was addicting. Because
did you read it?
What's that?
Did you read it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, Rick, I'm so glad to hear that. Did you enjoy it?
I did. Yeah, very much.
Great.
Very much. Yeah,
Nice.
it was one of those things where I personally I'm not a big fan of straight linear storytelling. In other words, like I've read a lot of books that way, and if you catch my attention, I can stick with a book like that. But authors I really like, one like Stephen King, he does it all the time. He has 400 characters and he jumps from place to place.
Yeah.
And that's what really gets me, because when I'm reading, I have the attention span of a gnat. Like I need to do, so this book, it didn't have 400 characters, but you kept going back and forth between now and then, thought process versus real life. And it was enough to keep you kind of off balance, to change it up a little bit. And the narration of the story, really did catch my attention. It was interesting. It was a very interesting story.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, the main character was actually based upon a guy that I knew back in the day, because I used to be, as I'm sure you can tell, I used to be in the messenger scene back in the day in San Francisco. So I couldn't ride because I got hit one time, and I realized that I love the messenger scene, but me and bike riding, they're not great companions, right? Like, I'm not the most coordinated dude in the world.
Right.
So anyway, my buddy ran this illegal bike messenger company out of Lower Haight Street, out of his apartment. And so I worked as a dispatcher, and I knew all the messengers, and the main character, the narrator, James, is based upon like an amalgam of a number of bike messengers from back in the day. And most of them, a lot of them were either addicts or were quick on their way to becoming them. And also a lot of them were crazy Luddites, like they hated technology. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. And the thing that was most terrifying about the book was that, I understand that the premise of creatures coming in and out of screens was a little far-fetched in real life. But then you kind of look at the world around you, kind of like you were saying a minute ago, is it so far-fetched? Because you have, we do a lot of different paranormal topics here on the show, and one of the things that we do often is things like ghost hunting. In fact, my co-host who's not here tonight, he runs a ghost hunting organization. So I've gone out with him, and they have K2 meters, and they have ghost boxes and recorders for EVPs and stuff like that.
Cool.
And the idea behind all of it is that there's another realm, another dimension there that will contact you via energy sources.
Sure.
And so this story that you wrote is not so very different. We're looking for, grandma in the attic, but who's to say grandma in the attic couldn't be some kind of malevolent force using the energy between the devices to manipulate us or hurt us or whatever,
Yeah,
so
completely.
It's not so far-fetched as it might seem.
Look, I hate to be that yet another guy who talks about it, but particularly it seems like in the last 6 months, everybody and their brother is an expert on quantum mechanics, right? Like suddenly everybody knows something about quantum mechanics. But but when you talk about what we don't know, right? I'm reading this book called Understanding Ignorance, and I can't remember the author's name, but in it he says that we think we know 75% and don't know 25%, but in fact it's quite the opposite. We know like 10%, and the rest of the universe is the 90% that we don't really know anything about.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is we don't know what influences technology have, right? We've learned that over time. Like, microwaves don't cause radiation poisoning. Well, the early microwaves did, right? They discovered that, and then they changed them. So we don't really fully understand what our technology does before we throw it out into the world. Now, to some extent, that's how you learn, right? But one of the things I was driving at with the book is, and again, I want to point out that I am not a Luddite at all. I've got a PC. I've worked in IT for 30 years, right? Like, I love technology. I think it's great. But there were a couple of things I was driving at. One was, look, we have this feeling that we're all getting when we use digital technology. There are certain feelings that have begun to grow more and more. I'm being watched. Someone is controlling me in some way, right? These not just conspiracy theories, but conspiracy theories are driven by genuine anxieties that people have, right? They share them amongst themselves. And so I dove at it from that point of like, well, you got this technology, and all of a sudden people are acting really they feel kind of paranoid and a little scared. Like, are people tracking me? And is my privacy setting okay? But then hand in hand with that, the creatures from that other dimension, as well as that stuff they feed into people, was very much about what it feels like to be an addict, that you're being controlled by something that you can't really understand, right? And really what's controlling you is yourself. You're the one who's diving so deep into that.
Yeah.
And as far as the paranormal side of things, I am a huge fan of the idea that, back to that idea of ignorance, I'm a huge fan of the idea that we don't really fully understand how the universe works. And is it possible that there are things that are able to reach us that we don't know about? I don't know, but I think it's an awesome idea, and it would be cool to explore it more, not just physically explore it, but explore it artistically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you talk to some of the people we've talked to on the show, they'll talk about having attachments, physical attachments on your person. And there are healers and people that will, with a straight face and completely seriously say, look, you have something attached to your neck, and that's why your neck hurts. And they'll do Reiki, they'll do something over top of you, and your neck feels. I had a Reiki session done on me at a street fair about 3 years ago, just on a whim. It was like $10, fine, whatever. I sat down and did it, or laid down and did it, and I don't know, nothing physically felt any better or worse, but my life changed in positive ways for about 3 weeks afterwards.
Interesting.
And like just kind of lucky things, and it was noticeable. And my wife and I kept saying, is that because of the Reiki? Like, it's really weird that these things are like, we had the worst luck in the world for a lot of stuff, but for those like 3 or 4 weeks, things just kind of fell right. And I'm just like, is it coincidence? Is it the Reiki? You don't know.
No, you don't.
That's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about like something that I've always been interested in is this idea of the collective unconscious, right? The whole Jungian thing of there is a collective unconscious. And I kind of have started to think of the internet as the collective conscious. That's where like we all kind of get on there and gabble at each other and click on things and laugh at each other's stuff and, chit chat back and forth. And I think it's really fascinating how easily that energy of human consciousness, we don't think about it. We think about it one person at a time. You're like, oh, human consciousness, it has an effect on the rest of the world. That all sounds rather theoretical, right? It's like, but when you see it on a grand scale, you see the effect that a lot of human consciousness can make on the behaviors of others. It is actually fascinating, right? That energy, that change in energy, that if everybody's suddenly pushing in one direction, it's funny how quickly people's own energies get swept up in that.
Yeah, there's actually and I don't know the exact name of the experiment, but there's an experiment that's been going on for years now, back into the 90s, where I know they have it's basically a computer, for lack of a better way to explain it, it's a computer that runs binary code 0s and 1s, and the idea is that when there's a lot of positive or negative energy in the world, that code will change, will be different. And they've run this thing for years, and they've found that like events like 9/11, when that happened, the code shifted because the world all of a sudden had this like, oh shit moment. And a few other things along the way where that happened in the last 20 or so years. So it's what you're saying is true. It's there is something there, and it gets into you can even take down the road of religion. What is prayer? Prayer is people wishing for something and putting their intention out there. Sometimes they do it one at a time, and sometimes they do it in mass groups. And does that really have an effect?
I mean, look, I was here. I'm sure you guys all know about what went down in New Zealand in 2019, down in Christchurch, the shooting.
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting in New Zealand because New Zealanders are not exposed to that kind of thing generally. There aren't a lot of guns. There's not a lot of gun violence. I mean, there is some, but it's mostly it's in gangs. There are gangs that have guns, but most people don't have them. So when that shooting took place, New Zealanders were stunned. And let me be clear: if you've never been to New Zealand, they're not the most emotional people. Like they're pretty British, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're pretty stoic about everything. And so I had gotten used to that. I've been here for coming up on 20 years, and so I had gotten used to sort of the way that they approach things and the certain American topics that you can't discuss, right? You can't get too emotional about stuff. People get really freaked out by that. They get all uncomfortable. But this was the first time that I ever saw New Zealanders deeply moved by something and people in tears. And you could feel it across the country. You could feel it everywhere. I mean, I could feel it on the street that all these people rushed to these mosques across New Zealand, not just in Christchurch, but across New Zealand, and stood out in front. There were police, there were gang members who stood protecting mosques for weeks at a time, right? And you could feel this energy, like you're saying, you could feel this energy around you from all these human beings showing compassion to these immigrants, these Muslim immigrants and Muslim citizens. All these Kiwis were putting all this great energy towards them to protect them and to show them they were welcome. And you couldn't help but be moved by it. And like you said, when events like that happen, it can have this negative or positive response that you actually physically can feel if you just let yourself feel it.
Right, right. And like you're saying, with the internet now, it's different now than it was even 20 years ago.
Oh yeah,
where
totally.
you can have that connection with so many more people via the internet, and to positive or negative. I mean, it goes both ways. And oftentimes it is negative. People are people.
Yeah, people are people. And as we, I think as we keep proving again and again, what's the great line from Men in Black? Will Smith says to Tommy Lee Jones, he says, "Why not just tell people? People are smart." And Tommy Lee Jones says, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it," right?
Right.
The moment you put people in a group, a large enough group, they start to act in really kind of weird and can be dangerous ways,
Right.
And yeah, you're right. Rick, I think you really hit it on the head, is that one of the things I hit on in the book is this idea of mass delusion and mass control.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas before, the best you could do if you were an autocrat was cover maybe your country, right? You could maybe like, oh yeah, I can rule over these people, but it never really went much further than that. But with the onset of so many human brains connected together, it's much easier to sway people in this or that direction, again, because of this energy that they give off, because of this energy as a wave that pushes people in certain directions.
Right. Now, one of the things in your book that I thought was interesting was you used a particular drug to drive the narrative.
Sure.
And that is also something that has been discussed not just on this show, but in tons of places, things like ayahuasca, peyote. When people take these drugs, they go into these supposed realms and they see people and creatures and everyone just thought it was mass delusion. But there's a little bit of question about that. Like, is it mass delusion or is it changing your brain structure? Because what was found out in the last couple of years was that your brain literally changes the way the wiring of your brain changes when you take these drugs.
Sure.
So the way I always explain it is like a radio. Like if you have a radio and you're getting 5 miles worth of coverage and you rewire your radio, maybe now you're getting 20 miles of coverage. That other 15 miles you couldn't get before. You couldn't hear those other stations, but now you can because you rewired your radio. Are these drugs rewiring your brain to the point where now you can get those extra 15 miles, so to speak, and see these things that are really there that we just can't see?
Look, and again, I have led a very quote unquote colorful life from my 20s up until my 40s. And I've done a fair number of drugs. And I think when I spoke to my kids, because my kids are now grown, and when they turned 18, I allowed them to ask me any questions they wanted, right? They were 18, they were adults. They could ask Dad anything they wanted about my past or about anything. And they asked a lot of questions. They really dove down and asked me the deep questions. And one of the things I said to them was, look, when you're in your early 20s and you're screwing around with a lot of these things, when you're, taking mushrooms or taking LSD or things like that, a lot of times it gets relegated to this like party mindset, right? Like, woo, we're high, whoa, we're going nuts. But in fact, that may be the case for certain substances, right? It may be very relaxing to smoke a doobie with your friends while you're drinking, sure. But when you start to talk about these more mind-altering ones, the ones that you're talking about, the psychedelics, the mushrooms, the LSD, the peyote, there's a reason that these things were considered sacred by the peoples that found and took them, right? They were sacred for a reason, because you are now diving deeper down into the collective unconscious, and you're expanding your mind. You're allowing your mind that opening, much like Carlos Castaneda talks about in his books. You're now expanding your mind and opening it up to things that aren't there on your day-to-day experience, particularly things about yourself, things that maybe you're not ready to think about. And things that maybe are in your perception, but you don't feel comfortable with. And so I said to my kids is treat it with the respect that it deserves. Do not go in with a party mindset. Go in with it. It is a sacred thing. And to your point, yes, very much so. We don't really understand everything. I mean, for God's sakes, we can't even map the entire ocean. What do we really know is our simian selves, right? Like we don't know a great deal about the universe. So what is it that you experience? Well, it's a combination of internal and external, right? And there could be things that we don't know about that those cultures learned over centuries and millennia of using these substances in a ritualistic way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like you say, you don't know. And for so long, people kind of just laugh that off like a hallucination.
Sure.
But it's been like the government has spent a lot of money studying these things, along with things like remote viewing and all these different topics that UFOs and whatnot, like that just came out a couple of years ago. All of a sudden we found out we've got these programs in the US that have been dumping millions of dollars into UFO research. Like
sure.
The government wouldn't do this if they didn't think there was something there. They're not going to waste their time.
It's not like they're dumping. Yeah, they're not dumping millions of dollars into unicorn studies.
Right. So it's one of these things where you wouldn't do this if you didn't think there was smoke where there's fire where there's smoke.
Yeah, totally, man.
It's interesting. And again, your book kind of spoke to that, and that's what I'm saying. That's why the book was so interesting, because it touched on so many of these different topics that in a way that kind of tied it all together, like and made you really think, like, is this really happening? Maybe not exactly the narrative that you tell in the book, but something similar to that.
So I want to go back and answer or make a statement about something you said. Yes, I read exactly like you. If you can't keep snapping me forward, if you don't have like varying chapters or things keeping me moving, I'm out. I know there are some books that I've plowed through, but generally, if I'm looking for a style, the style you talked about is mine as well. Right. One of the things that I think is interesting in storytelling is the idea of, and I know we mention it, but we don't actually think about it very much, is the idea of allegory. And allegory to me feeds back to this sense of, we were talking about the feelings that you get from something. Because a story can be up here, and this is the narrative that you've gone through, but your visceral or emotional or spiritual reaction to those can go much deeper, right? I'm sure you've read books where you were like, okay, the story's kind of up here, and like, okay, but why do I feel so impacted by this, right? Why do I feel all these emotions behind it? And one of the things that I wanted to drive home with the book was the allegory of the feelings that we have nowadays, right? This addiction culture that we find ourselves in, and this digital addiction subculture that is taking up so much of our lives. The feeling of conspiracy theories, of the paranoia and the fear and the anger that you see on the streets. Like everywhere you turn, there's a frickin' screen. There's somebody looking at their phone. There's some awful thing off in the distance hiding away. There's some secret answer out there that if I only follow this smile within a smile within a smile, it'll take me to Alice's nightmare land, right? I wanted to try and capture that energy that I was feeling. And as I continued to write the book and things began to ramp up, the election in 2016 and all the stuff that's taken place in the States since then and has taken place around the world, right? Looking at Russia, looking at China, looking at, different countries that are getting much more militant and nationalistic. I drew on that to try and create this allegory, create this feeling of what I have been feeling. And I think a lot of people are feeling, because when I do get people to read the book, when people are reading it, they come back, they go, wow, that is what I'm feeling right now. What you're talking about, that's how I feel. And that's what I'm hoping to get to people, is maybe I can't necessarily do it on the internet. That would be kind of ironic to have do all my talking about screen addiction on the internet. Right. But what I can do is try and get it in front of people so that maybe start to create some of that movement, start to create some of that energy change so that people do stop for a minute, go, am I on my screen too much? I feel like I kind of am. And I don't know about you, but I've had a couple of periods, particularly during the writing of the book, where I got to the point where I was just freaked out by screams. Like I got super freaked out if my phone went off. You couldn't have gotten a VR helmet on me if your life depended on it. Like, get it away from me, right? I was kind of method writing, you know, I took on the character.
Right.
And it is very, you know, I suddenly was like, oh, well, now what do I do? Now I'm out in my garden. I'm out working in my garden, or I'm, you know, playing a game, you know, playing chess, or I'm just hanging out with my partner. I'm actually reading a book. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the internet, but maybe if people just used it a little less and lived their actual lives a little bit more, you know, enjoyed this beautiful world that we have, and these beautiful people that are around us, and this beautiful nature that's around us, and actually enjoyed that a bit more. And as I'm sure you know, scientists have begun proving in various places that human beings in the natural world, amongst other people, in a natural setting, has huge mental health benefits. Like they've proven that sort of like time with nature is very healing for people. And I feel like it's something that we've lost a lot of connection with. The real world has sort of been pushed aside since the advent of the internet, and the internet's everything. And it's like, well, that's great. The internet's really cool, and I love it. I love playing video games. I love chatting on podcasts like this. I love it. You know, I love all that stuff. But there's also a time for that world that we have, and the fixing of that world.
Right.
But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I've talked about on this show a few times over the years. I've talked about a movie from, I think it was 2008, somewhere around there, called Surrogates with Bruce Willis. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but it's one that I always come back to when we talk about consciousness, because the premise of this movie is that the world basically is in a place where real people never go out into the world, and they live in these little pods. What's that?
I've not seen it. Oh, dude, thank you.
They live in these little pods, which basically are like VR pods, but to like the umpteenth degree. And they send these robots out into the world. They're like robots made into that person's best self physically.
Okay.
So the world is inhabited by these beautiful people. Everyone is like 25 and beautiful and handsome.
Everybody's hot.
Right.
Fit.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the real people are like shriveled up in this little cocoon in their house, living in this VR pod, and they're feeling everything that robot is feeling. It's all tactile. Everything is, you know, everything from like eating food to having sex, and everything is all.
It's a dystopian avatar.
Yes. So and
nice.
I've talked about this when we talk about consciousness, because we've had this discussion of, you know, are we really here in our bodies, or are we somewhere else living vicariously through an avatar, which is our body? Right. And I use that movie as an example. But in this case, like what you're talking about is this is like an example of where does technology end? Is this the end game for us? And it would be laughable a few years ago, but now it's not so laughable, because like you say, people are walking around with their face in their phone already. And how far is it from this to sitting in a little pod in your house, living your life vicariously through a robot?
Yeah, dude, it's not. So I'm sure you've read it. Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So his wife, Mildred, and the family,
right,
and the walls,
right.
She's got the 3 walls, and she's always bugging him for the 4th wall.
Right.
Back in his time, people were like, science fiction mumbo jumbo. Dude, I could easily build one of those now. You know what I mean? I could easily build with the walls and these phony characters who are talking to me. Chris, how are you today? You could build that now. That is technology you could build. Right. And I keep coming back to this idea of in the book, I come back to it. I infer it a bit, but I think I should have driven the point a little harder home. But it feels to me like we've built this thing, this internet. It's amazing. We can collect all of our knowledge, and like I said, it's a collective consciousness where we all can communicate and interact with one another. That's amazing. But it feels like we've kind of taken this evolutionary cul-de-sac in terms of our addiction to it, that we don't treat it as a tool. We don't treat it as a great thing that a advanced civilization will have. We treat it as this thing we can't stop consuming, right? Mm-hmm. We're just wolfing it down day after day after day. Mm-hmm. And it's been pushed on us day after day after day, right? Like everything has to be done through social media. Everything has to be an ad. It all has to be streaming, blah, 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 blah. I get why it's happened, because that's the kind of society we've created. But I just wonder if maybe this is one of those turning points for us where, as a people and as a species, we need to go, okay, maybe we all need to calm down here a little bit. Maybe you can't force that on people, right? You can't say, no, you can't use the internet. That has to be a personal choice, right? And a cultural choice that we just, as a person, I go like, nah, I'm good. You know, like I'm going to check once a day, but I'm not going to be on for 7-8 hours. Right. And then you make that change in your life. Other people, that has to be a cultural change. But I do wonder if maybe we've gotten a little crazy with this thing. And as you're pointing out, which I think is a really great point, well, if we keep going down this road, where exactly is that headed? Are we in pods next, right? Is that what we're thinking a good idea is? Because personally, I don't think that's a great idea.
Right. No, not so much.
Yeah.
So this is another thing I thought about when I was reading your book. Are you a fan of H.P. Lovecraft?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because this book hit me as very, very Lovecraftian.
It is very Lovecraftian. In fact, I don't know if you know, but I like Lovecraft. I love Lovecraftian horror. So Lovecraft himself, he wrote a few good things. Some of his stuff is a bit dry and dull, but some of it's quite good. Like, it's some amazing stuff. And then other authors in that same group of guys, that same group of original Lovecraftian writers, that just between all of them, they have some amazing stuff. And there's actually a story called The Hounds of Tindalos, which was written by Frank Belknap Long. And he's the person who I dedicated the book to. Mm-hmm. And if you've not read it, you can get it. You can read it online. It's just a short story. And that short story was actually something I read in my mid-teens. And that was like one of the first Lovecraftian things I ever read. And I was blown away by it. And so the Hounds of Tindalos are these horrific creatures out of time. And that character, Halpin Chalmers, that is the character in that story. Okay. And so I felt like Frank Belknap Long did not get the credit he deserved as a Lovecraftian writer. And this was sort of my homage to him. But yeah, if you've not read it, you can, like I said, you can find it online. Just look up The Hounds of Tindalos.
I didn't realize that was a real story.
It is. And yes, man, I am a huge fan of Lovecraftian and cosmic horror. It is one of my favorite things to read.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And again, it's one of the first things I thought of as the story was progressing. I'm thinking, this is awfully Lovecraftian. Because for anybody who's listening who doesn't realize, Lovecraft is basically what he writes. The cosmic horror is that there is a veil between our world and another world, and sometimes there are doors that open randomly. Sometimes there are people that force those doors open, and things come through back and forth between the two realms. And that's the gist of what his stories are about. Most of his stories are about. And this story, Screens, Chris's book, is very much like that. The door being the screens.
Yeah. Being your phone, your mobile phone, your TV, your PC, your movie screen, whatever it is.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. So what's next? I know you've written some other books besides this, and what do you have cooking in the future?
That's really interesting that you ask. I was just talking to my publicist about it today. So I have a couple of options that are on the table. There is a follow-up. So Screens is part of this series of pieces that I've been writing called The Seven Coins Drowning. And I'm writing one for each of the 7 deadly sins. So the first 3 are already out there. They're available on Amazon as Kindles because they're too short to really print into a book. I wouldn't want to make somebody pay money for a teeny little book. But I had done so many of the sins so far, and that's where Screens came in. Screens is the 4th in the 7 of these stories or books. They're not related in any way, though I am one of those writers who puts those cute little sly winks between the different ones to each other for somebody who reads them. You know, I love that stuff, and I know other people do too. So there is a follow-up to Screens. There is a story that carries on, not from exactly where Screens ends, but sort of in that vein, and that is in the works. But that one's going to be a while away. The project I'm most excited about is I grew up as a kid. I grew up reading Shel Silverstein. I'm sure you know who Shel Silverstein is, and loved that stuff. I read my kids all of the Lemony Snicket's books, the series of unfortunate events, and loved all of that. So I've decided I'm going to create sort of a Shel Silverstein book for creepy kids. So something a little more, not totally disturbing, right? But just a little creepier, a little darker, because there are kids. We all knew that kid. I was that kid.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, this is all cute and everything, but everybody seems kind of sweet and happy. You got any monsters, right? You got anything a little bit creepy, a little bit disturbing?
So like Shel Silverstein crossed with Goosebumps.
Yeah, a little bit like that. And then I have a variety of friends around the world who are illustrators, and I'm going to collaborate with them to try and create a really well illustrated, and just create there's going to be about 6 stories in the whole set, and they'll just be well illustrated and just stories that somebody can read to their kids or the kids can read themselves.
That sounds really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, because I even though they're kids' books, I like those Goosebumps books. Some of them are pretty freaky.
They're awesome.
For like teenish age books.
Yeah. They're great, and they're great fun. And yeah, even as an adult, like I said, reading those books to my kids, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I actually really enjoying this.
A little scary.
Yeah, I'm a little freaked out. I might have to stay up and have a beer before I go to bed now.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what's next for me. Because during the making of Screens, or at least the last year of Screens, I got really into the production stuff and the PR stuff and the ad stuff. And one of the things that I did was I worked with a filmmaker to make 3 book trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've not checked them out because you've read the book, I'll kick you the link to the YouTube channel so you can check them out. There are 3 of them, and
I think I posted the one for Screens on our social media yesterday.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, they're a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the experience of working with Photoshop and Premiere and stuff like that. So I might screw around with that a bit more, but really the big push for me is to get Screens out there and then dive into my next piece of work. That's what's next for me.
So do you see Screens or any of your works being like made into a movie?
It's funny because somebody asked me that as well. Again, I don't know what you'd think, but I don't know how I feel about making a movie or a TV show about digital addiction.
About screens, yeah.
About digital addiction to screens. I feel a little hypocrisy going on there if I did that.
Right.
The other ones, yeah, I totally could see the other ones. They very much read like a Outer Limits or a Twilight Zone episode. They have that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read your other books, but Screens, yeah, I could see that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it has I grew up on all that stuff on, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, the Night Gallery. That was the world that I grew up in as a kid. So a lot of my writing carries that through.
Yeah, the Rod Serling influence.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on with us today. It's been
thanks, Rick. It's been great.
And again, I really enjoyed the book. Again,
thanks so much.
Have a copy. I know Mike just put it up on the screen a little while ago, but there you go. Here's our little high tech. Got the light shining off. I don't know. This is great podcasting. So I'm going to release this as an audio podcast. I've got people saying, "What the hell are you holding up?" But yeah, it's been fun, and the book was great. I highly recommend it. We'll put links in our show notes to your Amazon page for the book and anything else that do you have a website or anywhere people can go to see your work?
Yeah, I do. So I can kick you over some links, but it's Christopher Laine, LAINE.net. So ChristopherLaine.net, one big word. But remember, LAINE, not LANE. Okay. And you can find me on social media. I'm on all of them. My hash, or my, what do they call it? Your handle? I don't even know anymore.
Twitter? Yeah.
Whatever my name is. It's always the same. It's always Domingo, DOMINGO, Ladrone, LADRON. For those who don't know, it means the Sunday thief in Spanish.
Nice.
Cool. Awesome, Rick. Thank you so much, man. I had a great time. Absolutely.
I did too. And anytime you want to come back, next time you write a book or just to, hang out and chat about these topics again, it was a fun talk.
Yeah, it was for me too. Thanks a lot, Rick. You take care, man.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Chris. Have a good day.
Take care.
All right. That was Chris Laine. And again, the book is Screens, and it is definitely worth checking out because it's very, very interesting, and it will make you think twice about using your computer and your phone 24/7.
Mike back in here. But anyway, I didn't stay on obviously because I haven't read the book, but I love the idea of it. It's right up my alley because I stare at screens nonstop all day, every single day. It's my life.
Right.
But I really, he's a great guy, great interview, and I'm not one to read books, but I'm actually interested in this one. And I liked at the end that you talked about a movie of it, and he said that he wasn't sure about doing a movie of an addiction, the addiction to
Right.
devices and stuff like that. But right now, one of the highest rated Netflix films, documentaries, is the Social Dilemma, the one that talks about people's addiction to social media. So, I mean, I think right now is the perfect time. If he was able to get a movie deal and put something like this out, I think it would be, I'd want to watch it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does. The book reads, you can see it being made into a movie the way that it plays out. It's really interesting. It's topical. And like I said, it touches on all these different aspects of life. You know, it touches on the addiction to computers and technology. It touches on the aspect of not only drug addiction, but what certain types of drugs might make you see and how it could rewire your brain to see more than we normally see.
I think I know that as mushrooms, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Well, it's a lot of mushrooms, but yeah, there's a lot of different things that can do that. Like they have ayahuasca ceremonies down in South America and whatnot. And and that's the whole point, is to kind of just sit back and let the visions come. And the visions, are they real or are they not real? That's the question. So
I love that kind of, because I'm a firm believer in the fact that I think that certain drugs do tap into that brain and kind of rewire it for that little time that you're on that drug, and you will have those euphoric moments where you might experience something that was an outer body experience, kind of like, what I mean, like, or outer worldly experience. I know that Joe Rogan talks about all the time with like the flotation tank, where you do a few drugs and you float in complete darkness in a tank, and it turns off all your sensories. So you do like a little weed or a little something, and then you have no sensory detection. You're just floating, and it's almost like you're in outer space and you have this outer body experiences. I love the idea of all that kind of stuff. I don't think you even have to do the weed. I think just the flotation. He talks about the flotation, but he's smoking the weed before he goes in there.
Well,
it's Joe Rogan. He's smoking the weed. No, you don't have to do the weed, but I'm sure it helps.
You can add that in. I'm sure that
you helps. Can add a little soup in there while you're in there. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything, Rick. I mean, what do you get? You're a narc? You coming at me? I mean, it won't hurt anything. But no, they said that it doesn't. You don't even have to do that, because you kind of just it really is just floating. It's really cool. I haven't done it, but I would love to do it.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, even meditation, something like that. People have talked about meditation being, you being able to see and hear things while you're meditating. Now, I've tried meditation a couple of times. It's only once or twice did I get to a point where I kind of felt like, I mean, I didn't see anything like that, but I felt like maybe I did it right, because my brain runs 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't know. It's hard to not think about anything and to just kind of let your mind rest.
I've had that same thought. Like I love watching like actors on TV that talk about how they meditate, and it takes them to this place, and that's how they can recenter themselves and everything. Right. But it's so beyond my comprehension, like you said, for people like us, where your mind is always running 1,000,000 miles a minute, to even resemble the thought process of like just shutting it off is like so beyond anything. I believe if I did that, it would cause a panic attack. Like my whole system would just shut down and not know what's going on.
Like, I kind of feel like doing meditation correctly is kind of like putting yourself between waking and sleeping and staying there. And that's a tough place to stay, because if I get that, I'm either awake and my mind's going crazy, or I'm asleep, and I can go from one to the other. I sleep every night, but that time between is very short. And it seems like meditation would be like get there and stay there. You know?
Isn't it known, correct me if I'm wrong, but the lucid dreaming is knowing that you're dreaming, correct? Lucid dreaming? Yeah. They say that when you are aware that you're dreaming and can actually manipulate your dreams, that means you are in that state between dreaming and awake. Is that correct? Have you heard that?
I think so. I'm not sure if that's true exactly, but you're in a different state than you normally would be. Yes, I don't. Because
I've said before, right? I've said before, I've had that happen many times where I'm in between that state where a lot of times in my dreams I know I'm dreaming. You guys don't want to know what I do when I find out I know I'm dreaming, but I find out I know I'm dreaming, and that if that is that state, I wonder if because my brain is so attuned to being in that state so often, like a couple times at least a month, a couple times, is there something to that where my brain is also susceptible to being in that state if I allow it to go there from a conscious state into it?
I'd be interested to see you try and get hypnotized.
I 100% out thinking that. I'm like, if I'm able to enter that state multiple times, because you talk to people and people are like either they've never had it or it's very rare that it happens. And for me, if it happens more often than a lot of other people, am I able to have that done? I'd love to find that out. That'd be interesting.
Or a regression, past life regression, something like that.
Oh my God, I'm gonna find out something I don't want to know. I'm just gonna find out something I don't. You're gonna find me in a corner in a fetal position.
It's a past
it's gonna
life.
Be your fault. It's gonna be your fault. I found out in a past life I did something horrific. I'm not gonna be able to forgive myself. Like I did something really, 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 really bad. That's what I'm gonna find out.
You were a French whore.
I just the worst too. The worst of the worst French whore known to man.
Nobody wanted to pay for your services,
and I just kept on flinging it out there and kept on flinging it back at me.
You're
just really bad.
Wake up even more depressed because you figured people didn't want it in the 18th century either.
You know what? Past life regression doesn't sound like a good idea anymore, Rick. Thanks. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, that's about all for tonight. We're going to wrap this up. But again, I want to thank Chris Laine for coming on. Again, his book is Screens. We're going to put his links in the show notes. You can go to Amazon and get it. And again, if you like a combination of Lovecraftian horror and a book that will make you really think hard about addiction to both drugs and technology, this is the book, because it's an easy read. It's like I said, it jumps you through. The chapters are, for the most part, pretty short, and it pulls you along through the story. And it's definitely an interesting read, and I highly recommend it. So, Mike, you still there? You with me, buddy? Maybe not. I think Mike dropped off.
I'm here. There I was getting ready. You were like, we're getting out of here. You know, people that can't see, I've got a whole control room behind me with buttons and knobs and levers and things. Yeah, that when Rick gives me the go ahead, I start pushing things. I just start moving things.
I want to mention that too. Are you ready to announce this little thing with Toxic?
So we have it's an unofficial announcement, unofficial launch. All the other shows have talked about it. It's kind of hard to keep the secret when you have to still broadcast out of the place. But no, we have a brand new studio. I'm very excited. It's a great location in Clementon, New Jersey. Rick has not been to the studio yet, so I can't wait for him to come in and really see the new digs. We're still working on logistics of it, still changing some doors and putting up some windows and stuff like that. But for all intents and purposes, broadcasting wise, we are full-fledged in go mode, operating officially here. And at some point, I will be posting on the Toxic Radio Facebook page and possibly the Toxic Entertainment Facebook page, pictures and video and everything like that. So it's really cool. So happy to be moving up a little bit and doing it on our own this time. Like really, this is full-fledged. My name is on the lease, So it's go time.
Look at you, look at you being a responsible adult.
Yeah, just how much more whiskey do I have? None? Okay. But no, but I'm very proud, very happy, very stoked, and very excited to share it with all the shows, with all the guests. Rick, you'll be happy to know we have an actual, not only the studio and the control room, a break room, but also a chill, relaxed little waiting room for everybody to come in and just, because sometimes Paradelphia does roll 50 people deep into a podcast.
We tend to, on some shows, we tend to get a crowd. Yeah.
Yes. So for those shows when that happens, we got you.
Nice.
We got
All
you.
right.
So can't wait to get you in here.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for Mike. I am Rick. I want to thank Chris Laine for coming on tonight. Screams is the book. Check it out. We'll put the show notes or the links in the show notes. All right, guys. So thanks for listening. And we are Paradelphia. And we are out of here.